Alicia and this is Type Hammer Tries to Read. How many times will I film this video? Sometimes I just don't know how to start and then I end up just rambling, and then other times I just dive straight into the books and I feel like I haven't chatted. Do you know what I mean? It's really windy. I'm in the house because the shed, it feels like a ship and it definitely sounds like a ship. And I think it would be quite annoying if I recorded my video in there. If I had a mic, I need to get a mic, then maybe it would be different. Yes, so I'm in the house. As I say, it's really stormy, and I know that there's loads of storms going on in various other parts of the world, and also there's the fires in America. So I hope that wherever you are safe, or as safe as you can be. Let me know if you want to talk about the sort of situation where you are in the comments, and we'll have a chat. I get so much information about world news through people that interact with me in the comment section here and through my Instagram. You wouldn't believe. I wouldn't know half the stuff I know if it wasn't for this channel. So I will always be interested in what you've got to say about your part of the world. So yes, I'm in the house. It's really, really damp. If you follow my Instagram, you'll know that I almost brushed my teeth with a toothbrush that had a slug on it, which was an upsetting discovery. It was on the handle end, but it was pitch black when I picked it up, so it was a pretty grim moment. The dogs are up here with me. They are slightly out of shot. I might drag one of them into shot before the end of the video. And let's talk a little bit about some books. So I have read a whole fiction book, which is almost like newsworthy these days. So I read Natalie Haynes' 1,000 Ships, which is a retelling of, well, it's meant to be giving a much needed voice to the silenced women of the Trojan War. It focused a lot on the Trojan women. So a lot of you may have either heard of or read Pat Barker's Silence of the Girls, which was also shortlisted for the Women's Prize. That was last year. I read, was it last year or 2018? I read Silence of the Girls and loved it. I know it had sort of mixed reviews, but I absolutely loved it. I thought she just really personalised what was going on and made it almost like what do you call it? It was like this is not the words I'm looking for, but it was a lesson for the modern era as well, referring back to the past, which is exactly what myths and legends should be used for. This doesn't focus on one person the way that Silence of the Girls does. Silence of the Girls is more about Briseis and all the people around her, and she's a person who was captured from a nearby citadel, and she's brought to the gates of Troy, and it's all focused on what happens in the Greek camp, sort of circling around Achilles, but it's the women around Achilles. This is the women inside Troy, and sort of the moment of their capture and how they are brought out. And it's mostly the Trojan women interacting with Greek women, or not necessarily Greek women, but women who've been captured. So Briseis is in it briefly, and also the goddesses that are sort of huge influences of how the war goes and who is saved and who is, cast aside and various things. About maybe a third of the way through, I was really, because she flits between various viewpoints, lots of different viewpoints, lots of different chapters, lots of different headings, even different styles. And I did, genuinely, I was going to DNF it. I'm really glad I didn't. Once I got past 50%, which is a long way to go, but once I got past 50%, I found it very compelling. And I'm not going to sort of say it was one of my books of the year or anything like that, but I think sometimes you need something that's going to carry you away. And this definitely did that. And it really reignited, I always have an interest in Greek myth and in any kind of myth, but it reignited that feeling that I want to know more about it. So yes, I on the whole, I really, really enjoyed, and I would recommend, and you'll fly through it as well. I read it because I had finished Initiated by Amanda Yates Garcia, Memoir of a Witch, which I talked about briefly last time. And because she ends by going to Greece with her mother to see all of the temples and to kind of retell Greek myth with an eye of focusing the women in it, I just felt like it was a natural sort of flow to move on to 1,000 Ships. This, as I said last time, has a really strong start, and then I felt like it lost me a bit in the middle, but it's got an amazing end. And I think the only reason why it lost me a little bit in the middle was because I was expecting something else from it, and I didn't expect it to be so biographical. And as I think I've said in the past, I'm a little bit allergic to gone off the rails kind of memoirs. And she borderline does that. She does deal really well with mental illness, with abuse. She deals well with that kind of self-destructive element of being with somebody who gaslights you and generally just ruins your life, but also claims to adore you. And I think we've all been in relationships like that. So I thought she did that extraordinarily well, and with a lot of compassion for the other person that I don't necessarily think he deserved. And then at the end, when she actually comes into her witchy powers, I was just enthralled. I do kind of wish there was more of that, and I'm hoping that maybe her next book she'll go into more depth about how she became the Oracle of Los Angeles, because you kind of go from her being a bit of a mess to, I don't know how many years she skips, it feels like almost a decade. Suddenly she's the Oracle of Los Angeles, and she's making her money from being a professional witch. So yes, the ending as well was just an empowering speech about women, trans women, non-binary folk, everybody is included in her narrative, and I love that. And she says several times that she has a vision about I think it's a goddess telling her that she needs to focus on her womb and like engender life and blah blah blah. And she kind of says, I don't for a second think that meant I needed to have a baby. And I don't think for a second that you need to have a womb to be able to engender that kind of feeling of giving life. I was just like applauding the whole time. And also at the end of the book, she thanks is it the very start? I'm sure. She thanks the Chumash and the Tongva people on whose land I grew up. You know, and she does mention, without being overly romantic, about the fact that this land isn't hers. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend that. Then I've got 3 books that are on the go. So, buddy read with Ariel from She Wants the Diction, whose channel I will link below. And if you don't follow Ariel, what are you doing? Her videos are great. Her Instagram is great. She's really politically active. We are astonishingly similar people and scare each other with the fact that we think about a lot of the same things in a lot of the same ways. But her channel is really unique, and I definitely recommend a follow there. We decided to read Out of the Woods by Luke Turner, and this was in part because we were both kind of interested. Ariel, I think, more than me, but she stirred an interest in me that I hadn't necessarily thought about, to read about a memoir from the perspective of someone who's bisexual, because you don't tend to see a lot of that. We felt like that was something that we both wanted to learn about from someone else's through someone else's eyes. So yeah, I bought it originally. I did acknowledge that was part of what he was writing about, but this was about his depression and the way he used, this is by Luke Turner, the way he used the woodland that, I can't even remember the name of the woods, even though he's Epping Forest, to sort of come to terms with who he was as a person, and how the forest became central to his recovery from depression and various other traumas that he had. I don't know if you can see where I've put the inside jacket, so I think we're 34 pages in, but we have decided to DNF, and I'm devastated because I spent, it was half price, but I spent like $8.99 on a book that I bought on a whim, and if I had just bought it in a bookshop instead of online, I would have read the first couple of pages and known that the style wasn't for me for a start. So the style of writing was definitely not for me. If you're gonna say call your daily gatherings of wood for the fire your diurnal gatherings of wood for the fire, I just can't. I can't deal with that. Like, who says that? In a poem, you could get away with it if you did it right, but it just came off so. And then he sort of bemoans quite early on the way that a certain pub, which had like a Lido out the back, how it's been modernized, which I totally am on board for. I live in a very rural kind of traditional area, and I watch houses being modernized all the time, and they all just look so soulless. It just blows my mind that anyone would want to do that to their house. So I'm on board with that. But then he says, that's going to be now frequented by the Only Way is Essex types. The Only Way is Essex, just Google it and enjoy. I don't watch it, but I've got no, problem with it. it's people, you know, and if you've got the type of problem with it that he has, it's coming from a place of snobbery. So he says something about their fake boobs and their permatans, and it's just a lazy kind of slur against the type of person that you're actually judging because of what you perceive to be their intelligence. But what you're going to pick up on is this kind of surface thing that you think, well, you'll get away with, you know, a bit like calling someone a chav, which I don't know if you use that in the part of the world you're from, but is often a word that a slur that is used here to describe somebody who's poor, but hiding it behind the fact that they're wearing a Burberry scarf. Or anyway, yeah, we've DNF'd. And I do feel sad, and I do think that I certainly was not the intended audience for this. Okay, I'm not a bisexual man. I am slightly allergic to anything that comes out of London and is all about how, you know, crazy London is and how London sucked me in, and I went to the depths of despair. I could have a whole video on that. Partly because there is a lot of poverty in London, and I don't think any of the people that get the book deals are the people who are in that real grinding situation of poverty, that real situation of hopelessness. And it's just a story that's been told so many times. I don't necessarily think it's a story that doesn't need to be told, and certainly this perspective is really different. But yeah, as soon as it gets a bit too Londony, and I don't have a problem with London, my granddad was a Londoner, it's just that I think because it's the centre for publishing, a lot of the stuff that comes out is very sort of self-congratulatory or self-promoting, you know, like, oh, we all want to hear this story. It's like, well, actually, there's quite a lot of other cities in the UK that have their own individual stories, and yeah. Come at me in the comments, everyone from London. So next I've got the book A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia Elliott, and I'm buddy reading this with Siân of PaStory Time and Mercedes of Mercy's Bookish Musings, and we're 2 chapters in. This is a collection of essays and we are absolutely loving it. I think you have to order this from the US. I don't think there's a British edition. By the look of the way this has been bound, it kind of screams US. I can't remember where I got it now, but it came through the post and then I couldn't remember. I actually put on Instagram, don't know where this book has come from. And then Siân messaged me going, I remember you telling me that you were going to order it. So that just says a lot. So this is really interesting. Alicia Elliott is a Mohawk writer. She's covering a lot of topics in this. So far, the first 2 topics have been about depression in her family and in her family line within the Native American community as a whole. Also the clash between Native American life and Catholicism, which, you know, I mean, I've read the North Dakota Saga by Louise Erdrich, and the 2 can be in harmony, but they often aren't as well. So far, very, very interesting and just so well written. Is out of this world. So follow me on this journey. We're going to try and read it in a week. So I'll post stuff about it on Instagram, I think. But so far, it's just really beautiful. And the title comes from the fact that she tries to figure out what the Mohawk word for depression would be, and her sister helps her, I believe, because her sister is learning the language, and they kind of come out with a word that means, a mind spread out on the ground, which is a really amazing description of what it feels like, and a kind of, again, just shows that language is so important and that diversity of language is so important, because you can convey completely different things depending on what language you speak. So, you know, that's going to be a good one. And because me and Ariel are going to ditch Out of the Woods, and the one that we want to read, we're going to have to wait a month to get, I've decided that I can, alongside my buddy read, because it's only 2 chapters a day and I should be able to manage that. If I've got spare time, I'm going to be reading The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I've been really excited about this. I think Siân's read it and loved it. This is a kind of murder mystery, well, not a murder mystery, but it's a thriller, and it's about 4 men who go out and shoot some elk. This was 10 years ago, but a decade later, these men are being stalked themselves and hunted. The only good Indians charts nature's revenge on a lost generation that maybe never had a chance. Cleave to their heritage, these parents, husbands, sons and Indians, these men, must fight their demon on the fringes of a society that has no place for them. Yes, I think it's going to be really good. This was part of this book was part of a controversy on Instagram, which I don't know if you saw, which was that non-native reviewers were given free copies of this book and then kind of didn't get it. And not only were some really appallingly insensitive photos taken, like Instagram, I love Bookstagram and I love the creativity behind each of the pictures. You know, a lot of the time I'm just holding mine up to a blank wall, but sometimes I like to get creative on there as well. But the instinctive nature of some of the white Instagrammers to put something native next to this book was, well, it was not surprising, but it was just, you know, as mortifying as you can imagine. And then some of them didn't even bother finishing it. So yeah, that's what's gone on. And I think that's created a really positive spin, which is a lot of people are now hearing about the book that maybe didn't before and will presumably read it from beginning to end. So I've read the first, I think, 2 chapters and I really, really love it. I think it's brilliantly written and it's going to be, you know, I'm not often into thrillers, as you guys know, and it has to be a kind of literary thriller, can't even say it, thriller, to justify the time I'm going to spend, you know, which is precious time. I think this is, you know, going to be it. So there we go. Collection of books. I don't know if any of the dogs are going to come up to say goodbye. Do you want to come up, Eddie? Oh dear. Oh, poor little Edward. I know I disturbed you and it wasn't... I don't know if you heard that. We carry the dogs around like babies. So he is completely used to being cat. If this looks uncomfortable to you, his entire body is limp. Like, this is what he's like of an evening when he has to be put in his bed. And he goes, I don't know how, are you going to wriggle now, are you? He goes even more limp and somehow dramatically heavier, so that it is like holding a sack of unwieldy potatoes and you can't actually get him into his bed because he doesn't want to leave you, do you? Okay, right, I'm done now. I think this is way over 10 minutes. Was there anything else I was going to say? Thank you so much for the questions that I've had. I might put a little call up on Instagram for any more, but if you have any questions for my Q&A that I'm going to do for the celebration of 2 years of Time Mama Tries to Read, then there's still time. Pop them in the comments. A couple of the questions are really in depth that I've had so far, so I'm a little bit hesitant to take too many questions in case it ends up just being a super long video or the answers aren't very good. But don't let that stop you, because if worst comes to the worst, I can always do another video another time. Okay, hope you're all safe and well, and I will speak to you soon. Bye. I mean, look at them. What a life, eh? You happy, boys? Do you love each other?